Hamilton is going to give us level pegging in the championship as he comes home to win the first Saudi Arabian Grand Prix.
The last time Mercedes officially won a race was at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix on the 5th of December 2021. Today is the 12th of July 2022, meaning it has been 220 days since they were on the top step of the podium. The next time they'll have an opportunity to secure a victory will be this weekend at the French Grand Prix. So if they do win it, it will have been 224 days between then and Jeddah 2021. And that's best case scenario. To put this into context, Mercedes have had only 2 streaks longer than this. One which lasted 293 days between Hungary 2013 and Australia 2014, and another which lasted 406 days between China 2012 and Monaco 2013. In other words, it's been almost a decade since the Silver Arrows went this long without a win. It's mind-blowing when you think about it, considering how dominant they've been as a manufacturer in Formula 1. Year upon year, they've been the gold standard in terms of performance, innovation, and speed. The team that was once known for having the most formidable power unit on the grid has slowly become one of the weakest in comparison to its rivals. It was inevitable the other teams would eventually catch up at some point, and it's been refreshing to see them fight in the midfield for a change. I think even Mercedes themselves are relishing the challenge of making their way back to the top. The situation they have found themselves in is something they haven't experienced for a while, and they're more motivated than ever to turn it around. Their prolonged period of dominance hasn't been very popular with the average Formula 1 fan. However, when watching the British Grand Prix, I realised that the sport needs Mercedes fighting at the front. Seeing Leclerc, Perez and Hamilton all battling tooth and nail for P2 was some of the best wheel-to-wheel racing I've witnessed in a very long time. It gave us a mere glimpse into how special the spectacle can become when Mercedes have a competitive package. A three-way fight is always going to be more interesting than a head-to-head between just 2 teams. So now we've reached the halfway stage, can Mercedes really win a race in 2022? Their interpretation of the new regulations was radically different compared to the rest of the grid. In fact, no other team has anything remotely close to the design concept Mercedes went for this season. Theoretically, they believed their car to be the fastest based on wind tunnel simulations. However, they ran into a problem we've all become too used to hearing. But they didn't anticipate it becoming an issue, and it's hindered the true performance of their car for the first 5 races of the season. Throughout this period, Hamilton and Russell struggled a lot with setup, but when they could get the W13 into the right window, it was comfortably the 3rd quickest on the grid. But the trouble was that the car's optimal working range was very narrow and unpredictable in its behaviour. The porpoising suppressed the W13's true performance, but slowly by slowly, they've improved the car to the point where it's almost a race-winning one. Lewis and George have both over-delivered in a substandard car this year. So far, they've secured 7 podiums between them, which is pretty incredible when you consider that at the start of the season, they were over a second a lap slower than both Ferrari and Red Bull. Of course, fortunate circumstances played their part, but time and time again, they've been in a position to take advantage. The reliability of the Mercedes has also been astonishing. In comparison to Red Bull and Ferrari, who've had 4 mechanically related retirements each, Mercedes have had 0. Russell's performances have been ridiculously consistent from the get-go, finishing in the top 5 in every single race he has completed. His level of maturity can't be overstated, given how he's handling the situation that the team is in. Recently, he's been involved in a number of opening lap incidents. The collision with Zhou at Silverstone ended both their races, and the clash with Perez in Austria compromised his strategy. Nevertheless, in the latter, he made his way back up through the field to finish P4 behind his teammates. And speaking of his teammates, Hamilton has also been sublime, even though some would beg to differ. Initially, Lewis had a lot of bad luck with safety cars, to be specific, in Jeddah, Australia, and Miami. He also spent the first 9 races trialling a variety of extreme setups to help troubleshoot their issues with porpoising. And through the data he gathered, Mercedes were able to deliver an effective upgrade in Barcelona that eliminated the problem altogether. That Sunday, Russell managed to bring home a podium and display his immense skill in wheel-to-wheel racing against Max Verstappen. On the other hand, Hamilton's race was compromised by Magnussen on lap 1. But once he found clean air, he was the quickest driver out there. Their race pace that day was promising, but Baku exposed another problem. Since the track surface in Azerbaijan was a lot bumpier than other circuits, Mercedes suffered from bottoming, a phenomenon that occurs when the car hits the track surface due to running the car at low ride heights. But once again, both Russell and Hamilton maximised points for the team, despite experiencing such intense discomfort. Considering how poor the car has been, both drivers have been extracting absolutely everything from each and every race weekend, and that is something to admire. Sometimes, in Hamilton's case specifically, this hasn't resulted in consistent top 5 finishes. But him sacrificing his approach to race weekends has enabled the team to move in the right direction with car development. Now they have a solid base to work from, they can continue to bring upgrades over the next few races to help improve the car's performance overall. So, back to the original question. Will they manage to win a race this season? Well, you could argue that they should already have a win under their belts. Silverstone was a track that suited the W13 very well. The smooth track surface meant that they could run the car at lower ride heights without the car bottoming out, and the high-speed corners have naturally always played to their advantage. They also bought a raft of upgrades aimed at reducing lap time, rather than trying to get rid of porpoising. Starting P5 on the grid, Hamilton initially got off to a flyer and made his way up to P3, but was demoted back down to his original starting position after the red flag. From there, the Red Bulls both suffered damage from debris, and the race was between the two Ferraris and the 7-time world champion. Lewis's pace was unreal, setting fastest lap after fastest lap throughout the first stint. His tyre management on the mediums was also incredible, and it gave him an 8-lap tyre offset over race leader Charles Leclerc. He could have done without a slow pit stop, but nevertheless, he was still catching at a rate of knots. Had the safety car not come out, he likely would have passed both Ferraris and secured another victory at his home Grand Prix. For some reason, the W13 couldn't fire up the soft tyres as quickly as the Red Bull and Ferrari, and thus, his pace wasn't the same. Nonetheless, they could still take many positives away from the weekend, and the same can also be said for the Austrian Grand Prix. Even though both Lewis and George crashed in qualifying, they were looking good for a potential front row. Unfortunately though, the crashes damaged their new low downforce rear wings, and their race pace suffered as a result. However, they still managed to come home in P3 and P4 despite all of their troubles throughout the weekend. Once again, another example of how they're maximising race results from such a troubled campaign. Looking ahead to the next few races, Paul Ricard's track characteristics should favour their car more than any of the ones in the near future. That will be their next best shot, but they still have quite a bit of work to do to be competitive across a wider range of circuits. Their issues with bottoming on bumpy circuits could still plague them in some of the races later down the line, but then again, they have time to figure out what the best solution is. Another reason for them to be optimistic is the technical directive being introduced this weekend to clamp down on teams running flexi floors. Well, make that Belgium then. Anyway, the main thing is that Mercedes believes this will bring them closer to the front too, but that's yet to be seen. They're still not ready to win races on outright pace just yet. Despite being extremely fast in Silverstone, they got a bit of good fortune with Verstappen being taken out of the picture as he got a bit of AlphaTauri wedged into his floor. Had this not occurred, the Dutchman would have likely cruised to victory, which shows there's still gains to be made. Qualifying is one of the areas where they desperately need to improve. Their performance on a Saturday hasn't been nearly as strong as their race pace on a Sunday. If they can start higher up the order and control the races from the front, it'll massively increase their chances of winning. On a non-performance related side, their pit stops have been a bit sketchy from time to time. So if they do want to avoid a winless season, they need to be squeaky clean going forward. But considering where they started, they've made a huge amount of progress and are finally confident in their development direction. With Hamilton also a lot more positive about the performance of the car, he will only keep getting better. And as we know, when Lewis is in tune with his machinery, he is a completely different beast. If there's anyone who can deliver when it matters most, it's him. George has also been potent in the W13 on a consistent basis, and I wouldn't count him out for a race victory either. As I mentioned earlier, Formula 1 needs Mercedes fighting at the front. Race weekends will become a lot more interesting with the silver arrows in the mix. Adding the element of Hamilton and Russell as potential threats will also make the championship fight between Verstappen and Leclerc more captivating. Strategies will be forced to change as Red Bull and Ferrari won't be thinking solely about one another. They'll have to factor in Merc as well. Hopefully they can continue moving forward and make the second half of the season a three-way battle. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel with bell notifications to keep up to date with my latest videos in the future. Share this video around with others who you think might also enjoy the content, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.